Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm DF here. Welcome to Beauties and Beasts, the podcast of all things Beauty and the Beast and other fairy tales. And yeah, I swear that this will be the last episode in my Stranger Danger series. I couldn't think of a better time to talk about the dangers of strangers when we are trying to keep ourselves distanced from others and, shutting ourselves up in our homes, not interacting with anybody because they might have the virus. Yeah, let's just say that was unintentional, but I realized totally appropriate for the time. Alright, so we're going to wait for some other people to come in, and I will say right off the bat that I won't be doing any guest call-ins for a while. If you'll recall what happened in the coronavirus charity live stream I did a week ago, I had a problem with hearing my guests calling in, and I talked to Podbean about it. They said the problem's with Mozilla Firefox, and I should be streaming using Google Chrome from now on. But unfortunately, unbeknownst to them, Google Chrome does not work on my computer. It hasn't for months, so I'm just gonna have to wait until Podbean fixes their issues with Firefox. So until then, no guest call-ins, I'm so sorry. Okay, and I see that Steve Samuels has just entered the chat. So Steve, I know in the charity live stream that at the last minute you donated 5,000 gold beans. Yeah, let me give you another clap for that because that was for the International Rescue Committee, and thank you for that. Yeah, but because of the technical difficulties we had, we weren't able to fulfill that request at the last minute. So Steve, I know you wanted us to make up a fanfic word for word. Obviously you can't really do that since I'm the only one in the stream right now. So I've been thinking about how I can fulfill this request because it was a lot of money you donated at the last minute. Yeah, okay, so someone's trying to call in. I guess you missed what I said earlier. I'm having trouble with the call-ins right now. I've been having lots of technical difficulties, so I'm sorry. No call-ins for a while. Yeah, until Podbean fixes that issue. Anyway, Steve, I was thinking I could either read an excerpt of a fanfic of your choice, or if you like, I can read an excerpt of the original novel I've been working on. I'll give you some time to think about that. I think I'll save that for after the topic. Maybe you can also choose the topic in the next episode because I really haven't decided. But I'll give you some time to think about it. We'll talk about it at the end of the stream. Alright, so in the third episode of the Stranger Danger series, we're going to talk about a popular fairy tale without which the animated film industry would be absolutely nothing today. And that is the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or, as originally called by the Brothers Grimm in 1812, Schneewittchen, or Little Snow White. And before I go into this, I just want to remind you guys that if you have any questions or comments you want read aloud, the minimum cost is 5 gold beans. If you are already a patron, and that is Tyrannosaurus Venom and Anime Guy 1101, you can ask questions and have comments read aloud for no extra cost since you're already pledging at least $1 a month. You can fix that right now by becoming a patron today. Just go to my patron page on my profile. Yeah, just a reminder, 5 gold beans is minimum 4 cents. And I'm sorry if I'm charging for this, but at the moment it's my only source of income after being laid off from one job and being out of the other job because it's closed for at least 6 weeks. Any questions or comments that are unrelated to the topic at hand will be saved for the end of the live stream. Another way you can support the podcast is buy my merchandise on Redbubble. I have made some updates to my Pride merchandise, including adding the polyamory flag. Which people joke is the nature of Snow White's relation to the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah, I know, bad joke. I'm so sorry. Yeah, just go to my Redbubble page on Disney Fanatic23. That's Disney Fanatic23 on Redbubble.com. And check out my merchandise there. Alright, so first we're going to go into the original fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. I will warn you, there is some mention of blood and gore if you didn't know that already. Okay, so one winter evening, a beautiful queen is sitting at her window sewing, and in doing so, she pricks her finger with her needle, and blood falls onto the snow that is at her window. And she wishes for a child with skin as white as snow, lips red as blood, hair black as the ebony wood in her window frame. Yeah, some parents wish for kids to be president or a doctor or an Olympic gold medalist. That's awfully high expectations. Somehow, the queen manages to give birth to a child with these exact features. Somehow, never really explained. And she and the king decide to call her Snow White. But the queen dies shortly after giving birth. Very sad. The king soon takes a new wife who is very beautiful but also very, very vain. The queen has a magic mirror, and every day she goes to the mirror and asks the same question. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror always replies that the queen is the fairest of them all. You think you'd ask some other ultimate question like, what is the meaning of life? Or how did the universe get created? But instead she asks, hey, she's the most beautiful person of them all, right? Yeah, boo to the evil queen. Snow White grows up to be a very happy and very beautiful child. And one day when she is 7 years old, and the queen asks, mirror, mirror on the wall, blah, 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 blah. The mirror says it's actually Snow White. And the queen, very jealous of a 7-year-old girl, gets her huntsman to take the girl out into the woods, orders him to kill her, and bring back her lungs and liver as proof. Yeah, this woman's awful. The huntsman, of course, cannot bring himself to kill an innocent child and tells Snow White to run into the woods and never come back. So he kills a boar and takes its lungs and liver to the queen, who then has to boil them with salt, and then the queen proceeds to eat what she believes to be Snow White's insides. Yeah, messed up. Even more messed up than what you thought it was. I mean, granted, it's not actual cannibalism, but she thought it was human. Oh, yeah. Another one for that. So gross. Why don't we have a ew sound effect on here? So, little Snow White runs into the woods until she comes across a little house. And everything is so small, but clean and neat. Oh, wait, so the whole whistle while you work sequence was purely Disney's idea? Everything was already clean? Okay. And there are 7 little plates of food set on a tiny little table, and she eats a little bit of each because, well, she's been running for a while, and she's very hungry. And also very sleepy. And she tries each of the 7 little beds, some of which are too long, too short, until she finally comes to the 7th one, which is just right. Okay, this is starting to sound like another little fairy tale. Well, at least Snow White was running for her life, while Goldilocks was just an intrusive little vandal and thief. So, that evening, the masters of the house, 7 dwarfs, return home from their mine in the mountains. And they come in and see that everything is in disarray. And start saying things like, someone's been sitting in my chair, someone's been eating my food, and someone's been sleeping in my bed. Yeah, the Brothers Grimm have a tendency to repeat themselves. Oh yeah, Steve Samuels 3 sends a gift of 5 gold beans. Red Riding Hood is looking on suspiciously. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Okay, so they find Snow White fast asleep in the bed, and she is so beautiful that they do not want to wake her. And the 7th dwarf decides, because he has no place to sleep, sleeps 1 hour with each of his brothers until dawn. And then Snow White wakes and tells the dwarves about her evil stepmother and how her life is in danger. And the dwarves let her stay if she promises to keep house while they are away in the mine and cook all their food. And this part is weird because she is a princess and a child in this story. How the hey does she know all this? Yeah, that is a good question. At least in the Disney version, she had been like Cinderella and forced to do the chores for her stepmother anyway, so she already knew how to do it. And from a feminist perspective, this might seem sexist, making the girl keep house for a bunch of men, but I think for the time, it gives Snow White a sort of job, and she is not just freeloading, Steve Samuels 3, 5 gold beans. Hi ho, and lo, away we go. Wow. Okay, that was a nice comment to slip by. So, years go by, And each morning, the dwarfs go off to their mine while Snow White is left alone to keep the house. And she is warned by the dwarfs to beware of her stepmother and not let anyone in. And as you know how these fairy tales go, you know what she's going to do. Yeah, because nobody ever listens in fairy tales. And the queen then asks a mirror on the wall, who's the fairest and all that. And then learns that Snow White is alive and living with the 7 dwarfs. And learns that the huntsman has tricked her. And she decides if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. So, using her skills in magic, she disguises herself as a peddler woman, selling bodice laces. She comes to the house, and Snow White, thinking she's just an honest peddler trying to make a living, lets her in. And the woman shows Snow White her laces, and then laces Snow White up in a bodice and pulls on the string so tight that she passes out unconscious. The dwarfs come in that evening, see Snow White on the floor, cut through the lace, and she's able to breathe again. Yeah, I don't think it works like that. I mean, even if she came back, she would have lost a whole bunch of brain cells, which might explain Snow's later actions, to be honest. The dwarfs warn Snow White again not to let anyone in, as it could be the queen in disguise. Yeah, you know where this is going. Okay, so, 5 gold bean donation from Pt.3. Must have been much easier to make a living when everyone learns a craft when they're young. Must have been much easier to make a living when everyone learns a craft when they're young? I guess you're right. In that time, people got apprenticeships. And BellaPinkSavage with another 5 gold bean donation. He really wishes that one of the dwarfs has stayed with her. You would really think so? There's 7 of them. Surely one of them could have just stayed and kept her company. And they could have had a different person each day. Yeah, that is quite the plot hole. Why does nobody do that? Well, I guess they wanted her to be independent? Nah. Okay. And you know what? Boo for the dwarfs. Yeah. So, when the queen learns that her attempt failed, she tries again, this time with a poisoned comb. And she's selling her wares as a peddler again, and Snow White hesitant at first, but eventually lets her in, allows the woman to put the poisoned comb in her hair, and then Snow White falls on the floor, and the queen thinks she's victorious. Until the dwarfs come home and take the poison comb out, and she's fine. Yeah, I can see my doctor rolling his eyes at this story's medical logic. And then finally, in the 3rd attempt, we finally get to the poisoned apple. One that is half red and half white. Poetic with Snow White's features, skin white as snow, lips red as blood. Yeah, and the red side is the one that is poisoned. So, when the queen, disguised as a peddler, again, a different looking one, asks Snow White if she can let her in, and Snow White's like, no, I can't let anyone in. Oh, that's alright, you could just continue talking to me through the window here. You're technically not letting me in. I knew she'd find a loophole. Yeah, I'm gonna keep using that button. And the queen's like, oh, you're worried that it's poisoned, aren't you? Here, I will cut the apple in 2. I will eat the white half, and you'll eat the red half. Yeah, you know where this is going. So, seeing the queen take a bite, Snow White thinks it's okay. So, in this instance, she's not entirely stupid, just outwitted. And, of course, after taking a bite, Snow White falls on the ground dead, and the queen is the fairest in the land. Yeah. Not happy for Snow White. When the 7 dwarfs come home, they are unable to revive her and realize that she is really dead. And they agree that she is too beautiful to bury, and so they put her in a glass coffin on a mountain for all to see. And they go to pay their respects every single day, along with the animals of the forest, including an owl, a raven, and a dove. Time goes by, and her body does not decay, and it's as if she's just in a deep sleep. And one day, a prince traveling through the wood sees Snow White in the coffin and asks the dwarfs if he can have it. He will offer all the gold in the world, as he cannot live without seeing her beauty. Yeah, I'm starting to think this prince is a necrophiliac. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing confusion in the comments here asking Snow White was really 7 years old. Well, she was 7 at first in the story, but then supposedly some time went by, and this is when she's a young woman that she's poisoned. Well, actually kind of hard to tell because this was 19th century Germany where honestly you could be really young and still get married. So, shrug. You can understand why she's made older in later adaptations. Okay, so anyway, as the prince's servants are carrying the coffin away, they stumble, and out from Snow White's mouth pops the piece of poisoned apple, and then she awakes and is alive again. Yet, nope, it wasn't a kiss that revived her, but a 19th century version of the Heimlich maneuver. Yet not very romantic. Maybe, but then again, why whoever thought kissing a woman while asleep was any more romantic? Really, that's more of a 20th century trope. Alright, so 5 gold bean donation from Steve Samuels 3. But remember, DF, she wasn't saved by the prince's kiss. It was the minerals of the mine that purified her poison, at least according to film theory. Huh. That is an interesting theory. Yeah, but like I said, the true love's kiss is really more of a 20th century trope. And not really from the fairy tales, actually. If you look at Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, the Frog Prince, those fairy tales famous for their true love's kiss, don't really have that. And the ways the spells are broken are very, very weird. So anyway, when Snow White wakes up, the prince asks her to marry him, and she accepts in fairy tale record-breaking style. And everyone in the land is invited to the wedding, including the evil queen, but doesn't say on the invitation who the bride is. The queen hears from the mirror that the new young queen is the fairest in the land. And eager to see just how beautiful this new queen is, she goes to the wedding and is very shocked to discover it's Snow White. And as punishment, she is placed in a pair of red-hot shoes in which she is forced to dance until she is dead. Yeah, very abrupt ending. Some I've seen have her actually shatter like a mirror to be more poetic, but now you know where the idea for red shoes in the Seven Dwarfs comes from. So, moral of the story, watch out for strangers. Although in here, that moral is kind of mixed, to be honest. Because Snow was actually helped by strangers, as Red Riding Hood had been, like the woodsman, by 7 men and later a prince. Actually, it was someone that she knew who was trying to hurt her, and that was a woman. Yeah, the story in its original form doesn't really paint women in the best light. They're either really naive or evil. Another moral, appearances can be deceiving. In some versions, the queen actually takes the disguise of someone Snow trusts, so that she's not just falling for a stranger. So she's really not that naive. There are some versions where Snow White eats the apple willingly, or she just doesn't fall for it. And I think the real moral of the story is don't give in to vanity, because the queen was so obsessed with her looks and jealous of a girl who much younger than her and who was so innocent and never done anything wrong to her except be pretty, and she paid the ultimate price. And there are many versions, especially modern ones, in which the dwarves had their own individual personalities and names. I mean, sure, you know the Disney ones, Doc, Sleepy, Dopey, Happy, Grumpy, Sneezy, Bashful, and Sleepy. Did I say all those right? No, wait, did I say one of them twice? Yeah. or some of the dwarfs are given the names of days in the week or related to the colors of the rainbow. Yeah, this actually isn't the only Grimm fairy tale to feature Snow White. I saw someone in the comments was mentioning it. There's another story called Snow White and Rose Red. Now, is it the same Snow White? That's a question people have been asking for years. And based on the story, I don't think so. Actually, this one does relate to Beauty and the Beast. And I'm going to go over this one too, because it's also got an important lesson. So, once upon a time, there is a widow who lives in the woods with her 2 daughters. One is Snow White, and the other is Rose Red. And they were named after the red and white rose trees that grew in the garden. And Snow White is described as more quiet and gentle, while Rose Red likes running about in the meadows, seeking flowers and catching butterflies, while Snow White just stays at home with Mom and helps with the housework and reading. Don't you just love the three-dimensional personalities of these fairy tale heroines? And they are very good sisters, so fond of holding each other's hands and vow that they will never be apart. And one cold, snowy evening, a knock comes at their door. The mom thinks it's a weary traveler, but it is in reality a big black bear. Rawr! And the bear says that he will not harm them, despite how frightened they are. But he is half frozen. Oh, okay. So, here's a joke from Steve Samuels for 5 gold beans. And they had 2 sisters who lived with their father, Black Tulip and Pink Blossom. Yeah, very funny. Well, I guess what happens when you name kids after flowers and colors. Anyway, the bear comes in, and at first everyone's scared, but the mom takes pity on him and has him warm up by the fire. And soon, everyone's getting used to the bear being in the room, and Snow White and Rose Red start playing tricks on him, like pulling at his hair. And he doesn't really mind, but when they get a little too rough, he says, "Snow White, Rose Red, will you beat your wooer dead?" Very forward bear. And during the winter, they let him sleep at the hearth, and then he goes out during the day. When spring comes, he says to Snow White that he will go away for a whole summer, because he must guard his treasures from wicked dwarfs. And one day, the girls are in the woods fetching some firewood, and they see a little man whose beard is caught under a fallen tree, and he angrily demands that they free him, while also throwing racist insults against humans. Yeah, that is how you ask for help. Snow White ends up cutting his beard free, which just angers him more, saying, "Bad luck to all of you! You ruined my beard!" Ugh. You know, I deal with customers like this every single day. And they find him like 2 more times and end up cutting his beard again, and in rescuing him from a bird, tear off his coat. And BellaPinkSavage for 5 gold beans. What a jerk. I agree with you. And the 4th time they find him, he's emptying his bag of precious stones, and then a bear comes after him. And terrified for his life, the dwarf offers the jewels and the 2 wicked girls in his place. But the bear just knocks the dwarf on the head, and he falls down dead. The girls run from the bear, but then recognize his voice. And then the bear skin falls off and reveals a handsome prince dressed in gold. And the prince says that he was bewitched by the dwarf who had stolen his treasures, and that his death had broken the spell. In the end, Snow White marries the prince, and Rose Red marries the prince's brother, and they divide the treasure equally, and they take their mother with them, and the trees of roses to grow in the castle garden. Steve Samuels, 5 gold beans. How convenient, yes. So the moral of this story is pretty much the opposite of what I just said for the first Snow White. Some strangers are just people in need, and some dwarfs are just jerks. Or really, don't be a choosing beggar. The bear had showed gratitude when he was helped, even when the girls weren't 100% gentle. And the dwarf had been more worried about his beard than his life. And by throwing the girls to the bear, he ended up paying the price. So yeah, this Snow White story isn't as popular, but some people like to combine them. Or take some references from the Rose Red story in telling the very popular Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs story. Like in the 2001 TV film, Snow White, the Fairest of Them All. In which the queen turns the prince into a bear as punishment for preferring Snow White over her. And when he licks Snow White in her sleep, both their curses are broken. Yeah, in the children's book, The Wide Awake Princess by Edie's sister, who was immune to magic, one of the princes that she finds to try and wake her sister has the same backstory as the bear in Snow White and Rose Red, as he was also enchanted by a dwarf. And some people have connected the character of Rose Red to Red Riding Hood, and sometimes make her and Snow White friends, like in the TV adaptation of Roald Dahl's Revolting Rhymes. There are honestly so many film and book adaptations of Snow White. To go through each of them will be its own separate podcast in itself. The most well-known, of course, is the 1937 animated film from Disney, which is probably the source of True Love's Kiss. It's the earliest version I've seen, with the True Love's Kiss saving everybody. And it is criticized to have a two-dimensional heroine, but really it's mostly honest to the original story. And remember that this was the 1930s. United States. Few people actually know that. So, like I said, the animated film industry would be nothing without it. Just look at the quality of animation and story for the 1930s. It even later inspired MGM to make its own fantasy epic, you may know as The Wizard of Oz. The closest film version I've ever seen to the Grimm story is the 1987 film from Canon Film Group, the same people who did the 1987 Hansel and Gretel and Red Riding Hood as a series. But that version I personally found kind of boring. My personal favorite is from Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, with Vincent Price as a mirror, and the best live-action evil queen I've ever seen. And in that one, Snow White is given some spunk, and also the dwarfs have some pretty funny lines. Like, "Oh good, let her sleep in my bed. First some of my peas are missing, and now my bed is gone. Where am I supposed to sleep?" And that one also does some serious lampshading, acknowledging, wait, should we really have a princess cook and clean for us? Or, I knew it was the evil queen. Oh, that's a stupid assumption. Don't call me stupid. And there are quite a few paradoxical versions of Snow White, especially in Fractured Fairy Tales from the Rocky and Bullwinkle series. They actually did this fairy tale several times. There was one where the mirror told the queen that Snow White dwelled with the Seven Dwarfs, and every time she went over to the dwarfs, she didn't find Snow White, but Seven Dwarfs trying to sign her up for like a health club membership or a dance club, and she ended up just giving away all her money, including her magic mirror. And then we learned that the seventh dwarf had been in the mirror the whole time. And another episode they did was called Snow White Incorporated, in which Snow White and the prince are the ones who con the evil queen. And the funny thing in that one was after she had, quote-unquote, killed Snow White, the mirror says, "Oh, Snow White is the fairest of them all." "What? But you're the prettiest." "What do you mean?" "Well, she always gives to charity and all that. What could be more fair than that?" Oops. Maybe you choose your words more carefully next time. And they also did an episode called Slow White and Rose Red, which really didn't have much to do with Snow White and Rose Red, just kind of made fun of their names, where Slow White was extremely slow and Rose Red had a very red nose due to eating so many apples. And then there was an episode called Red White, and that one had an evil duke with the mirror who would ask who has the reddest hair of them all. And when he's told about Red White, he tries to get her to dye her hair black, but she said, "Well, my fairy godmother said that my true love will know me by my red hair, so I can't dye it." And through this whole convoluted plot, the duke ends up being her true love. But that was a weird one. And there is also a storybook in which Snow White is not poisoned with an apple, but some lipstick. And so when the prince kisses her, she wakes up, but he falls dead. And then she's like, "Oh, I'll kiss him and wake him up." And of course, when her lips touch the lipstick, he wakes up and she falls dead, and they keep kissing and dying. And that was a weird one too. I'm waiting for a twisted version where Snow White is actually allergic to apples. Like, "Here, have this lovely apple." "Oh, no, thank you. I'm allergic." I'm waiting for a version that does that. Also, I mentioned Roald Dahl wrote a series of poems called Revolting Rhymes, and he did a version of Snow White, which started the same, but then when she ran... Steve Samuels 3 for 5 gold beans says, "Wait, you're an author, aren't you?" Yes, yeah, I've been thinking of doing a Snow White someday. I just haven't really thought of all the details. I should really consider that. Anyway, Roald Dahl's version of Snow White ended up with Snow White helping the Seven Dwarfs with their gambling problem. And so she goes and steals her stepmother's magic mirror so that they can find out who wins the race. And they end up becoming really rich from it. And yeah, that's how you use a magic mirror. You just don't just know how pretty you are all the time. And what I liked about that, well, the TV adaptation of that, it made Snow White and Red Riding Hood friends. So it was kind of implied they were more than friends. They kept holding hands and exchanging flowers. Really sweet. There was an animated film in 1990 called Happily Ever After, which served as a sequel to the Snow White story, where the prince was kidnapped by the queen's evil brother, and Snow White gets help from the Seven Dwarfs' cousins, the Seven Dwarf Elves. Female dwarfs. We need to see more of those. And there was another Happily Ever After, a TV series from HBO that had an episode called White Snow, a Native American take of the fairy tale. And then there was 2011, what I call the year of Snow White, because there were not one, not two, but 3 different versions of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 2 movies and 1 TV series, all in 2011. The first of which was the movie Mirror Mirror with Julia Roberts as the queen. And what I liked about that one was after the queen had put a love spell on the prince, Snow White was the one who had to kiss him and break the spell. And also Snow White becomes this whole badass outlaw with the Seven Dwarfs and is not completely helpless. And then there was the movie Snow White and the Huntsman, which I honestly did not see in full, and that one focuses on the huntsman, giving him more character as Thor. And then Snow White, becomes an outlaw with the Seven Dwarfs. Hold on, wait a second. And then in 2011 started the ABC series Once Upon a Time, which you may have heard of, in which all the fairy tale characters were trapped in the modern world. And the protagonist of that series was the daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming. And we see in flashbacks of how the Snow White and the prince had met. It didn't start with the true love's kiss. They actually knew each other beforehand. And in that one, the Snow White had actually robbed the prince's carriage, stealing his mother's ring, and he ran after her to get the ring back. And since the queen had tried to kill her, Snow White has been on the run as a badass outlaw. Okay, hold the phone here. I get multiple people having the idea of Snow White becoming a badass outlaw. It's an interesting idea. But 3 different studios at the same time? I'm surprised there was no big legal battle. Oh yeah, and Steve Samuels 3 here is mentioning the Frozen crossover. Don't forget the Frozen crossover. Frozen was included in season 4, as ABC is owned by Disney. They were able to play with the Disney counterparts of the fairy tale characters. Anyway, what made Once Upon a Time so awesome was adding more depth to popular characters. Although Snow White's character in this one, I will say, eventually annoyed me. I don't know, she just became such a pain. Although her relationship with Prince Charming, I will say, was the most believable I've ever seen of Snow White and the Prince. Because it was not a whole love at first sight thing. It was something that happened over time and just had more meat to it, you could say. Might have to do with the fact that the actors were falling in love and getting married, and they had a baby while they were on set. So the on-screen chemistry was real-life chemistry. The real star of that show, however, was the evil Queen Regina, who had a bigger reason to hate Snow White in this one. In a flashback, it's revealed that young Snow White had told Regina's mother about her secret love affair with the Sable Boy, resulting in him being killed. So yeah, her true love is killed, and so she tries to ruin Snow White's life and her true love. Yeah. Also, Regina is the one who goes through the most development in the show, in my opinion. And she's a character we end up sympathizing with more than Snow White, which is very interesting. I won't go into the whole series right now, because I'm saving that for its own separate episode, as there is a Beauty and the Beast subplot that I will be getting into there. Yeah, 5 gold beans from Steve Samuels 3. Revenge, the most shallow of desires. You are absolutely right. But at least in Once Upon a Time, she eventually realizes that the revenge is, well, it is pretty petty. So yeah, the overall moral of the story: don't talk to strangers, but also help them. Wait, what? What? Did I read that right? No. Or just be cautious when you meet someone. Sometimes someone will need your help, but also don't give them like $1 million. Like, just help them what way you can. And, yeah, like right now, donate to your local charities like No Kid Hungry, the International Rescue Committee, Feeding America, anything that's helping provide aid during this whole pandemic. Do your part. You wouldn't even have to leave your house. All right, so now that I've gotten all that out of the way, any more questions? Like any versions of Snow White that you would like to share? And you don't have to donate for this time, because now I'm actually looking at the chat. Yeah, that was a lot of notes. And Steve Samuels 3, you had sent a donation of 5,000 gold beans in the charity live stream. Have you decided how you want me to compensate for that? Like, you could decide the next episode, because I'm actually not sure of what topic to use. Well, if I may ask, do you take video game requests for the Beauties and Beasts ideal? Well, I don't know, because especially if it's a video game, I don't know. I'd have to really look it up if I can. Like, I can't really buy any video games at the moment because you said you have 2 different ideas. What's the other idea you have? Okay, while he's thinking, anyone else know any other versions of Snow White I might have missed? Because there are really a lot. BellaPinkSavage asks, "Hey DF, do you think Snow White is shipped with a certain dwarf?" Well, I know some people have made the joke of Grumpy and Snow White being a thing. Oh, I forgot to mention one. There was this animated movie called The Seventh Dwarf, and actually that was more related to Sleeping Beauty, in which the 7 dwarfs go off to save Sleeping Beauty's true love so she can so that he can kiss her, wake her up, and free the kingdom. And those dwarfs did have a crush on Snow White. People have made that joke of the dwarfs crushing on Snow White. So Steve Samuels 3. Well, first, if you did video game stuff, it's the Legend of Spyro. You do the Legend of Spyro trilogy and its handling of love through Spyro and Cinder. But if not, then just do Quest for Camelot from Warner Brothers. I've actually seen Quest for Camelot. It's one of my favorite non-Disney animated films, so yeah, I think I'll do Quest for Camelot next. If you guys haven't heard of that, it's a very good movie from Warner Brothers, and extremely underrated in my opinion. Okay, Quest for Camelot, that'll be the next one. And because you made such a big donation, I was wondering, Steve, if you want, and actually the rest of you, if you wanted to hear an excerpt from the original novel I'm working on. It is a fantasy novel aimed for middle grade, and it's about a girl who wakes up in the woods and has lost her memories. And well, actually, with the excerpt I'm choosing, you'll see. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yeses. So, okay, let me find the appropriate music here. Oh yeah, BellaPinkSavage, 5 gold beans. Oh yes, please. Okay, this is appropriate music. Let's see. Okay, I know the perfect part. So, if you want to hear more of the excerpts, I have 2 others that are available just for patrons. And you can go and pledge to my patron page. Just go to my profile, and bonus episodes are minimum $5 a month. Just to let you know. All right, so the main character, Jasmine, at least it's the name, about trying to figure things out. All right, so this is after this is after she's woken up. I'd been walking for about an hour before I realized I didn't know what this forest was called, or even what country I was in. This is a kingdom, right? I said to myself. I seem to recall a king. Not his name. I scratched my head. I feel like this country has 2 names. Land of the Vanishing? No, that's not right. Land of the Disappearing? No, that's not it either. I found it comforting to voice my thoughts aloud. It filled the silence of the woods and made the darkness less gloomy. I feel like I've been here before. I looked up at the trees curiously. Am I going in circles? No, I'm pretty sure I've been walking straight this whole time. I glanced around. Something's not right about this place. Everything's so dark. I know it's night, but it feels wrong somehow. I looked up at the sky. I wish the moon was out. And where are the stars? Have they gone away with the moon? The branches above me were hanging low. The leaves were brown and withered and dangling loosely. They looked like they wanted to fall, but just couldn't. Now that I thought about it, there didn't seem to be any leaves on the ground. It's autumn, right? I said, staring down at the dry dirt path. Why haven't the leaves fallen? The trees were also still. Even the loosest of leaves didn't seem to be catching any wind. Where is the wind? Spinning around, I walked backwards for a moment. I can breathe, but I don't feel any air. It's just so quiet. In fact, I was the only one who seemed to be making any sound. My voice, my footsteps, that was all. Aren't there any animals in here? I called out to the darkness. Hello? Anyone out here? Silence. It was as if I was the only living thing for miles around. Putting my arms around myself, I whispered, It's okay. You'll find someone. You're sure to find someone at some point. You're not alone in the world. You're not. The path ahead of me seemed to stretch on further, as if it would never end. Alone. I heard crying, but it wasn't me. It didn't even sound human, but like an animal in pain. I looked around for the source of the sound, but it seemed to only echo in my mind. It grew louder, as if more animals were joining in. I put my hands to my head, trying to quiet it all down. This wasn't the sort of noise I wanted. Then, as suddenly as it came, the crying stopped as something new caught my eye. A piece of paper nailed to a tree. Something was written on it, and I was relieved to find I still remembered how to read. Edict. By order of King Imperiosus, any myth, be it unicorn, fairy, dwarf, any non-human creature possessing magical abilities, is to be reported to the Royal Myth Hunters Guild immediately. Reward for the capture and or killing of any information regarding myths. Alright. Okay. Okay, I have to mention this. Someone mentioned that it's a Slender Man story. Right? Oh god, did I get cut off? Did I come back in? When did it said I got cut off? What happened? Only the beginning? Okay. So, okay, right, because it says you're live casting in another browser window. Finish live. Okay. I think it was because I opened up the Word document. Okay, good to know that would happen sometimes. But you still heard the majority of it, right? I hope you did. All right, so that's a little bit I'm giving there. Thank you for your donation in the last live stream, Steve Samuels. Like I said, if you want to hear more of it, I have 2 more excerpts that are available for $5 plus patrons. So yeah, if you want to become a patron, just go to my profile and click the Become a Patron button. Okay. All right, and also another way to support my podcast, you just buy my Redbubble merchandise or donate in the next live stream. And next week's episode, same time. Same time, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing Quest for Camelot, as per Steve Samuel 3's request. Yes, same bad time, same bad channel. Alright, and everyone, thank you for your little donations in this live stream. So we've got a total of 65 PodPoints, which is a total of 65 cents. That's not much, but thank you for your little bit of generosity, and thank you especially BellaPinkSavage and Steve Samuels 3. And all of you, be sure to take care of yourselves and watch out for strangers because they might have the coronavirus. All right. See you soon.